Alright, hello, I'm live. I wanted to go through a few recent discussions and show people what they were like. I think reviewing discussions as like a short version, a summary, would be a good way to get people to engage more with discussions. No, that's not the one. Okay, so this is a blog post from a couple months ago or something. Let's see. July 2018. Okay, over a year ago. Called Question Ignoring Discussion Pattern. So, me, what do you think about X? Them, silence. Me, why didn't you discuss X? Them. And then they start saying their opinion about X. And instead of answering the question, why didn't you discuss X? They answer the original question. They answer the previous question. So when I ask question 2, they answer question 1. This is a very common thing people do. And today, I wrote a little follow-up. This is something I already knew, but I hadn't said. So I realized I should add this. So this can continue. The pattern can continue. So you can ask question number 3. Why didn't you discuss not discussing X? At which point, what they frequently do is answer question 2. There's a repeating pattern where they answer the question one behind the question you just asked. I've seen people do that a lot, and I've seen it extend to multiple levels, and they still do the same pattern. So I wrote that comment, and then this guy trolled me. And there are a variety of pieces of information about this troll. Like, this is a blog post from over a year ago. How and why did he find it? He's apparently checking the recent comments page. And I've seen before persistent trolls who troll 1, any new post, and 2, not any, but like a decent number of the new posts, and 2, a decent number of the posts that have any active comments on them. So this fits with previous trolling behavior that I've seen for months. Anyways, someone complained about him because of the irony. So he said, maybe you should consider taking silence as a hint that people don't want to discuss and not pressure people. And he uses the word coercively here, which makes it sound like he's familiar with TCS and is someone who has been reading my stuff for years. And the whole comment seems to be pressuring me implicitly to say, you are not following TCS, you're a hypocrite. That seems to be the general theme and purpose of it. Which again indicates someone who has been familiar with my work for probably at least 5 years, and usually considerably longer, because there hasn't really been much discussion of TCS for a long time. Right, and they got the comment, oh, the irony from a troll who has written dozens of ignored comments. So there have been people who have been persistently trolling my blog. It's been an ongoing issue. I've commented on it a few times. I mostly ignore them, and after being ignored, they write another comment and so on. And it looked like this was one of those people, like, that's a reasonable guess that Dagny made. And so there's a huge amount of hypocrisy in saying, take silence as a hint and leave people alone, when you haven't been doing that. Anyway, this person responded, I've only written 3 to 4 comments here, and also they lied that they're not trolling, their comments have been honest, they say, and then just to show how much of a lying hypocrite they are, their next paragraph is a a hostile flaming insult, which is attempting to out the identity of an anonymous poster, which is one of the few things that's not allowed here. And it's attempting, the purpose is to hurt me personally. But it's also doxing. So I'm not trolling, all my comments have been honest, followed immediately in the same message by doxing. Doxing, by the way, whether you're right or wrong, like even if you're guessing, it's still doxing. If you say, I think someone's address is X, unless it's just completely a joke and completely fake and everyone knows it's fake, that's still doxing even if you're wrong. Like if you narrow their address down to 10 addresses and then you post one of those addresses, you're doxing them. Like, you could reasonably narrow Dagny down to one of, say, 20 posters, put me on the list, and then say it's me, and then you're doxing me, even if you're only 5% likely to be right. Or, not doxing me, but doxing Dagny. You're doxing the person who you're trying to out, not the person you accuse them of being. The comment about gender fluid female version also sounds possibly transphobic or something, like that's supposed to be an insult. Anyways, I checked their comment history, and that was their 7th comment just today, which fits with them being a ongoing, persistent, lying troll, etc. I also checked their previous comment history, and based on IP addresses, it is quite likely that they wrote at least 6 other comments recently. And it's very possible that they have a VPN and they've written other comments under other IP addresses. So they could easily have written dozens, but there's no way to know when they're just lying. Like the the technical information doesn't prove it one way or another. So I thought that interaction was notable. It's something about what's been happening recently. If you don't like that, if you'd like higher comment quality, etc., you could participate. You could raise the quality. You could write some good comments. It's one of the things you could do. I think it's notable how much people lie. That's an ongoing theme of mine, that lying is common and important. Like here, I've only written 3 to 4 comments here. That was just factually and fucking blatantly a lie. I think that their assumption was there's no way to prove it, no one will ever check. You know, I can just lie and I won't get caught, therefore I'll get away with it. However, it was very easy for me to check, and they were just straight lying. They did write the comments under 2 different IP addresses today, but it was very easy to link them because so this comment here and this comment here were under different IP addresses. So I just have to match the comments from this IP address from today and the comments from this IP address from today, and I add them both together, and then that's 7. Because they made it quite obvious that this person and this person is the same person. And some of their previous comments today were not under the name Anonymous, so they also, I know some of the names they post under, which I did not out, by the way. They doxed, but I did not dox. I only gave a comment count from today. I think that doesn't count as doxing. And I think they baited it, they made it relevant by directly factually lying about the issue. They brought it up. They wanted to talk about it, so fuck them. But this is the kind of information I normally do not post about people. But I think if they're going to bring it up and lie about it, it's okay to post it. And I think it's reasonably impersonal. Like it gives you no information about who this person is, where they live, what their name is, etc. There's a bunch of debate in the global warming thread today. It was kind of interesting because this guy showed up. He's really aggressive. He's really high on appeals to authority. But he's really disorganized and can't give specific arguments. He's always giving like 7 arguments at once. So this part I found notable because people are like this a lot. They will not use specific quotes and references. So okay, here we go. So someone brought up Lindzen Choi 2011 paper, and they asked for criticism because, okay, so this guy said Lindzen is like a fraud, he's a troll, he sucks, and here's a bunch of criticism of Lindzen. And one of the criticisms on his list was Lindzen has the following belief, with the implication that it's like obviously stupid or something. Now, the belief is related to negative feedback mechanisms for temperature from clouds. And for some reason, having scientific beliefs about that is supposedly troll. Anyways, Lindzen wrote a paper about it in 2011 with Choi. So, someone asked for criticisms of the Lindzen Choi 2011 paper, because the guy was implying that Lindzen's conclusion from his paper is like obviously stupid with no arguments. they got back in response, I'm going to find it, but it's like a bunch of arguments. Okay, so here it is. The nonsense of Lindzen plus Choi 2011. So they said Lindzen is stupid for believing X. They got the response, Lindzen and Choi published a paper on that. Do you have a refutation? And the person said, terminology, sensitivity, blah, blah, blah. Oh, I see. Yeah. So they said climate sensitivity, and the person said cloud sensitivity because it was specifically related to clouds. But right, it's the sensitivity of climate, like, due to clouds. Not the sensitivity of clouds themselves. But anyways, getting on to the important stuff. They said to this person, you are already cited evidence on it. And then they give a link to YouTube. I don't know why YouTube counts as evidence as in response to a published paper. Like, I think they wanted a written refutation. But also, all right, let's click on this and see what it is.
Oh dear.
Okay, so this is a conservative solution to climate change part 2, beginning with the words "oh dear" and giant things sign picture pointing left wing, right wing. Like, this is not Choi 2011, Lindzen 2011 response. Now, if you look at the sources, is there anything about Lindzen? No, there is not. Anything about Choi? Anything about the 2011 paper? Let's search for 2011. Aha, you can get 2011 down in the comments somewhere. Oh, this one's from 2011. What's this? This looks unrelated, but we'll see. Yeah, it's just a convention on climate change that happens to be from the same year. So, I don't know, when he linked that, was he expecting someone to read all 5,413 comments in the YouTube discussion? Because it doesn't look like the video has the information. And it's a fucking half-hour video. And if the information is not available in the table of contents, it's not reasonable to expect someone to watch the whole half hour because maybe it will have the information. Especially when you're acting like an asshole troll on a blog. You can expect people to watch a half-hour video on your say-so that maybe it's relevant. Anyways, for example, and then with no source, and then some quote. He doesn't give a timestamp. I don't know if that's from the video or if it's from the comments or what. Let's actually do a search, though. Okay.
Oh dear.
Find. Aha! So he's citing a nested comment on a YouTube thread by giving the link to the video. So we're not even supposed to watch the video, apparently? That's fucking ridiculous. I didn't even know it was that bad. I just looked, like, because I was ignoring him mostly. But Jesus. He's like, you're already cited evidence, link to YouTube video, and what he meant is one of the nested comments out of over 5,000 on the page has your answer, and he doesn't want to give the specific one. Anyways, so you read this, and it says, there were these various criticisms of Lindzen and Choi 2009, which is not the paper in question. Then it says Lindzen and Choi 2011 fixed the problems. Well, it says some of them, but it doesn't say which ones were not fixed. So Lindzen and Choi, they did a follow-up paper on a previous paper that dealt with some criticism. The question is their follow-up paper wrong, and why? This is suggesting that they didn't fix all the problems of the previous paper, but it doesn't name any. And then it says, issues remain, Dessler 2011. So there's Dessler 2011 is a rebuttal to Lindzen and Choi 2011. So there's one rebuttal here, and then there's this. On the observational determination of climate sensitivity and its implications. There's nothing about this that makes it look like it is a response to Lindzen and Choi. Apparently it is, but he didn't say that. Wait, is it one page? What is this? Who is this from? Randy Sheckman, editor-in-chief. Oh, this is from Peanut. This is just Lindzen getting rejected for publication. This source discredits the other side. Like, this is a anti-global warming source. I've quoted this exact thing before, I think. Let me look for the right part. Oh no. Okay, I quoted something else that's not apparently in this one. But this guy, or the PNAS people or whatever, they said something like, formally, you met the criteria for publication, but we're not going to publish anyways. That's what they said. It's fucking ridiculous. I wonder if it's on this page, formally. No. It's somewhere else. Whatever. Anyways. All this is not an argument that his paper is wrong. This is about declining for publication, not whether it's right or wrong. Oh, are peer reviews attached? Reviewer number 1. Okay, so there's peer reviews attached. Oh, I see why he's linking it. He doesn't like label his stuff though. Like this one's not labeled that you're supposed to read the comment, not to watch the video. This one's not labeled that you're supposed to look at the attached peer reviews. And he doesn't label which ones. Like which reviewer is he referring me to? Is it, or anyone to? Is it all of them? Is it reviewer number 1? Is it reviewer number 2? Like these reviewers like disagree with each other. Like 2 of the reviewers claim that Lindzen's paper is not clearly written, and 2 of them claim it is clearly written. 1 of them claims it describes its procedures, while 3 claim it doesn't. 2 of them claim it has supplemental material warranted, and 1 claims it doesn't. Like, and 1 claims not applicable. Like the reviewers don't disagree with each other. I mean, don't agree with each other, except on some points. Like sufficient general interest, they all said yes. And they all said not suitable quality. So that's, apparently they're all hostile reviews, given the not suitable quality. And conclusions justified, no, but still, there's significant dissent on major points between the reviewers, like clear or not clear. And if it's not clear, how do you know that the conclusions aren't justified since you're not clear on what the arguments were? Like, why does one person think supplemental material warranted and one doesn't? Wait, is this like the length of a review? Oh, this one's longer. The first one's really short and hostile, I think. Oh. If the paper were properly revised, it would meet the top 10% category. General interest. The same data have been used by someone else to get a different answer. They weren't able to follow the method or something? Anyway, linking someone to like this many pages with no explanation of what you're supposed to look at or why is not a reasonable sourcing. And there's nothing here that says a word that it's actually related. Is this even at the source? No. Okay, so, and he's also a misquoter, because where the hell does this quote come from? It's not from the document. Is this from the document? Is it, where is it from? Is it from this page somewhere? No, it's not on this page. No. Is this on this page somewhere else? No. Oh, maybe it's in the YouTube comments. He's quoting his own fucking YouTube comment. This guy's ridiculous. Anyways, so this is kind of what discussions are like sometimes. This is hostile, ridiculous people. But if you think you can do better, join the discussion. Like, why don't you ask your questions about global warming? Why don't you try to figure out the truth? Why is this guy participating, but you're not? You can do better than this, right? Anyways, I wanted to go through and give like a quick overview of what happens in the discussion. So they say you have one specific criticism. Reading the actual text here, they found one criticism, which is the Dessler 2011 thing, and they linked a rebuttal to that. And then the person says, your rebuttal is not an authoritative source, so I'm not even going to read it, I'm just going to ignore it. And also I gave lots of other arguments, but I'm not going to tell you what they are. See, they said I gave you other stuff, so I'm not even going to give you any information on it. Clearly, like, they weren't understood and they refused to try. How was anyone supposed to know they were linking a YouTube comment? They did not link to the comment. And they didn't explain what they're doing, so it was ridiculous. Anyways, so they would not argue in response to the link criticizing the Dessler paper. They just appealed to authority. So people appealing to authority is a common thing. By the way, it's interesting to appeal to authority in this particular debate because they say only peer-reviewed scientific publications have authority, and then literally the journal tells Lindzen, we're not going to publish you. So they're controlling, the pro-global warming people are controlling who gets to have peer-reviewed published literature. Of course, Lindzen did publish in a different peer-reviewed journal after that, so his thing is a properly peer-reviewed whatever article. But they seriously try to suppress publication of articles that disagree with them, and then they say those articles don't have authority, we didn't publish them. Because whenever you have like a majority viewpoint, which I'll grant that the pro-global warming propaganda is a majority viewpoint among various groups, if you have a majority group viewpoint, you can get a decent amount of control over things like the peer review process and get a lot of reviews to include some of your reviewers who will sabotage the opposition and so on. Like if you're a majority viewpoint and you're dishonest, power-grabbing social climbers, etc., then you can do that. Anyway, asked for a link, the person said, you are already given a link along with the titles, no need to pretend otherwise. They just literally and entirely refuse to explain what they're talking about or what any of their sources are. And it was a complete and utter mess when I tried to look through them. So yeah, I'm glad I have not been talking to that guy. So that is the quality of the pro-global warming debate that is willing to come and talk about it. Oh, I named it wrong? It should be number 45. All right, let me edit that. Okay, so I wanted to check the quality on my stream on YouTube. Mute on. It looks okay. Oh, it's stuck in a loop. That's pretty. Oh, it's getting worse and worse quality as it loops. Okay, let me go get some text up, and then I'll go back. There's not very much delay. That's not that good. I mean, it looks usable, but not great. I'll check the video archive later. Anyways, the comment, his source, unlike Lindzen is wrong, is to link to a comment that's like 10 pages long or whatever. And like, you're just supposed to find the relevant material somewhere in the middle of all this junk. So seriously, if you want to know what's true about the world, I mean, join the discussion, ask questions, try to argue the stuff, do a better job than this joker. Or just believe me about everything. But most people are willing to do neither of those. They won't accept all of my conclusions, and they won't discuss it. And they're leaving as the representative of their side, frequently people like this. You know, if you think global warming might be a reasonable idea, and you won't debate it, you're leaving this guy to debate it as your proxy, as your representative. Unless you can point to a better proxy, a better representative, which is one of the things you could do if you actually discussed, but if you won't discuss, you can't do that. And so on for like every issue. Anyway, there's this troll guy. First time for everything. Seen Curi get defeated in a... Did I even post in this thread? Like, when was my last post? Oh, I should search for Curi at. Okay, so there's 15, but some of them are like much older. I linked to a lecture. Linking. Oh, right. So this guy showed up, and I said, "You're throwing a ton of sources out at once. Do you want an organized, truth-seeking discussion? Do you plan to continue over time? What are your goals? Want to debate?" And I linked my debate policy. He never responded to me. This is part of why I was not talking to him, is because I said this, and he just never responded. Right. So this is comment 1424. Wait, he linked to that. Yeah, that guy deserves flaming, in my opinion. He's linking to me, linking my debate policy and asking the guy some questions. I never got an answer, and then he links that and says I lost the debate. I literally never got an answer. He didn't reply to me. He didn't debate me. We didn't have a debate. How was I defeated? I asked him, like, did he want to debate, and he didn't answer me. And then I'm supposed to rethink climate change over that? I think, like, normal words, like, if you're polite to people like this, you're inaccurately capturing what's going on. He was intentionally flaming me, and he was being retarded about it. And I think it is reasonable to use colloquial, informal, conventional language to express what's going on in a way people actually understand. Like, I'm trying to speak normal people's language. If I put this in pure intellectual logic terms, it doesn't have the same impact. People don't get it as much. It doesn't communicate as well. So I think it's reasonable to use normal language sometimes in order to be understood about things that are hard to be understood about if you speak in a very abstract way. All right, so that's global warming. Okay, so recently there was animal rights stuff, and I wrote this summary post about what happened. So very briefly, I posted my animal rights discussion tree with Peter Singer material to 5 places. Then someone else started posting it places, and I posted more places. And it got in total, it was posted at 16 places: Reddit, Stack Exchange, forums that come up when you Google animal rights, and some other places, Quora. So 16 places, plus on top of that, I went to a vegan Discord from a guy who debates people on YouTube called Ask Yourself. And he's specifically really into vegan stuff. So I went there, and he banned me for AFKing for 30 seconds after saying I was going to fix an audio issue, and the guy said okay. And then I did that, and then he banned me, and when he was, during the 30-second window, which I didn't even see his message, someone else in his chat told him, here he is streaming, and he's setting up his stream, just hang on. And then he just banned me anyways. So, fucking ridiculous, doesn't want to debate, closed to ideas. Those people were, like, ridiculous anyways, because I talked to them in text a little, and they really wanted to use voice. They don't want to use literature sources, they just want to laugh at you and call you Descartes, because there's a similarity between your position and Descartes' position. I think Quora is a bad site. Sometimes you can find like the occasionally useful answer in the archives when there's that many pieces of writings on a site. You know, some of them are going to be decent quality, but most of it is trash. But occasionally something comes up on Google results, and compared to other Google results, like, not particularly good or bad, can be better, can be worse, depends. I wouldn't recommend using the site very much. I think it's a bad place for discussion. I think it's a bad place for controversial issues. Quora works a lot better for factual issues, and like informational issues, like put an expert who has done this job for a long time tell me some things about how doing this job works. If it's a question like that, core is actually good at it. You'll get people with the relevant expertise who show up and like share some inside info. But if it's like a controversial thing like do animals have rights, core is a terrible site and is not going to help. I think I've written like, I remember I wrote one comment in response to Jordan Peterson and he didn't respond. That was just a minor minor little thing related to how many hours per day you can intellectually focus. That might be the only the only thing I've ever written on Quora. Oh, well, I wrote the animal rights question. I posted a question about animal rights, and I guess 2 comments as well. Both of my comments were you didn't answer the question, more or less, because I got 2 responses that just absolutely did not answer the question. I tried to make it a specific question, like, is there a scientific source with information saying X? Something like that. And people just gave answers that were not that. Yeah, I remember you said something about you thought you were gonna top, but there's so much RNG in these things that even if you're the best player there with the best deck, I think your odds of getting first place are really quite low, and that it's very hard to get consistently to the top. It's game dependent. I don't know exactly how consistent you can be in Yu-Gi-Oh, but top 32 is probably good, I think. I know that in Hearthstone, the RNG factor is like way too large and it makes the tournaments really inconsistent. I played in Hearthstone tournaments during beta, and I was able to get a lot of like first and second places because I was so far ahead of people in the meta. Um, but it very quickly, like people copy decks and stuff, and you can't keep enough of a lead to have any consistency with your results. I think there's a lot of like invitationals for Hearthstone, probably partly because of that, so they can just have the famous streamers play or whatever. This is the last I checked some years ago, but I remember there was one of the first larger tournaments. Me and a bunch of friends entered with decks that were way ahead of the meta, and none of us got like anywhere in the tournament. We all just got eliminated by random decks early on. Because the game is super inconsistent. So it was top 8. What was it after Swiss? Did it just go to a top 32 single elimination or something? Or top 64 or what? Do you play like best of 1, best of 3, best of 5 when you play an individual person? I don't know what Yaz a response to. There's probably like a 5-10 second delay between when I talk and when you talk. Single elimination is rough. Smash Brothers tournaments all go to double elim, pretty much. Especially with a tournament like you were in that's so many people. I'm guessing the seeding's not that good. And like a lot of good players are unseeded and it's kind of random. and they don't know how to accurately seed everyone, I'm assuming. And so like the lower quality of the seeding, the more you got problems with that. Like if people are ending up in top 32 in somewhat random order, you can have like the best player plays the second best player in the first round of single elim. I know that with Smash tournaments, they often seed like the top 64, say, and then leave everyone else unseeded. Because they can't seed everyone else accurately, but they know the top players well enough to seed them well. And having a high seed actually makes a decent difference in results. Like it's sort of a top player privilege that if you've gotten good results before, they give you a good seed, and then it makes it a little bit easier to get good results in the future. Sometimes it ends up mattering quite a bit, like when there's 3 god tier players in a tournament, then whichever one gets number 1 seed has a significant advantage because 2 and 3 are going to have to play each other, and then the winner of that gets to play number 1. So they get to skip out on 1 round of playing a really hard opponent. Or when there's 5 god tier players in a Smash tournament, then 4 and 5 have to play each other while the other 3 people get easier rounds in the top 8. That's happened repeatedly, where there's 5 players who are like a tier above the rest in the same tournament, rather than 4. If it's 4, then it's fairer. It's hard to fix. Like, you could take the top 5 players and round robin them, but that's not very compatible. Like, that works in invitationals with a few players, but it's not very compatible with also having a Swiss or double elimination or whatever with hundreds of players to, like, use one system for everyone. I played in chess tournaments. They were mostly Swiss and, like, only Swiss. They just used tiebreakers at the end. Chess games take too long, so there's like a limited number of games they can play in a weekend. So it'll frequently just be like play 6 rounds and then of Swiss, and that's it. And a bunch of people like tie for second place or something. Like there's a tournament where I tied for second place with like 4 or 5 other people and I won $1,500. The guy who won the tournament was a fucking re-entry. So the way some weekend chess tournaments work is they start on Friday, but there's a version of the tournament that starts on Saturday for people who cannot show up on Friday. So they have to play some games with shorter time controls and like catch up on number of games played. So like the Friday people get to play like long games with each other on Friday and then on Saturday morning, and then the Saturday people have to play like short games with each other on Saturday morning to catch up to the same number of games, and then the tournament merges together. Like after everyone's played 3 games, they all get put together into the same tournament basically. And the thing about that system is if you start out on Friday and you lose a game, you can withdraw from the tournament and then enter the Saturday tournament and try again and erase your loss, which is kind of bullshit, and they could disallow it if they wanted to, but I think they want the entry fees. So if I remember right, the guy who won the tournament had lost on Friday and re-entered to erase his loss. Which is a pretty big advantage because there's a lot of variance in tournaments. Like a chess tournament like that is done by sections, by how good you are. So they'll have all the rank A players play each other, and all the rank B players play each other, and all the rank C players play each other, and so on. And every ranking gets a separate tournament. Essentially, you're only competing with people at the same rank based on your rating level. And the result of that is the ranks are fairly narrow, so basically everyone you play is competitive with you in theory. Like some of the people are actually worse, but based on your ranking, like everyone that you possibly play should be able to beat you. So the variance is quite high, because if you're good enough to consistently beat them, you'd be in the higher rank, the next section up. So when everyone is close in skill level in the whole tournament, because that's how the tournament is set up, then you get a lot of variance, and it's very hard to get like a perfect score. Like the people who win those tournaments are the people whose rating is really inaccurate in general, or people who get really lucky and just have a good day. So with the high variance, being able to erase a loss, it's very possible to lose on the first day, even if you're one of the best players there. And being able to erase that is really powerful. The most important tournaments aren't like that because that's the open section where anyone can enter no matter what their rating is, and it has all the highest rated players, and there's more of a skill variation between the top player and the bottom player. But a lot of people don't want to play in the open section because they would just lose and get their butt kicked by masters, which is completely reasonable. So they have a bunch of sections for weaker players to play competitive games. But it causes a lot of close games, which is mostly a good thing. Like in terms of fun and learning, it's good to play a bunch of people who are similar to your skill level. But in terms of accurately figuring out like who wins the tournament, putting a bunch of people who are almost identical skill level together is really bad for coming up with a winner in a meaningful way. Anyway, so the animal rights debate. So posted at 16 places and went to the vegan Discord, so 17 places. And long story short, literally 0 answers that gave relevant literature that answered my basic question. My question was basically, do you have any scientific evidence documenting animal behavior that is incompatible with the following claim? Animals are complex biological robots. They don't have minds, they can't suffer, they're not conscious, they're not intelligent, they don't learn, they don't have general intelligence, etc. Show me some documented animal behaviors that don't fit that model. That they're just like advanced self-driving cars, Roombas, video game characters, etc. So I literally got not a single piece of relevant literature, and no one had any counter arguments. Most people, rather than giving literature, they just wanted to debate me. Like I'm like, do you have any literature showing X? And they're just like, well, I'm gonna make some Reddit comments and argue with you. Anyway, so there were quite a few number of people who linked sources to me, who cited papers and books and stuff. And what I did with these is I searched for words like software, hardware, algorithm, and compu, which when you search, it's good to leave off the endings of words. So this compu will match computer, but it'll also match computation. So it's like searching for 2 things at once. And also match compute, so 3 things at once. And computed, so 4 things at once. And computing, so 5 things at once. So it matches like all the different word endings. So anyways, you search for those things and you get like 0 relevant results, sometimes literally 0 results. You're like, okay, this is clearly not discussing whether animals follow software algorithms that compute what behaviors they do, you know? And a lot of the people were clearly not versed in certain expert knowledge, like the Turing principle, and that computation is software independent. And a lot of them denied that brains are computers, but had no alternative view and didn't understand the issues, and certainly didn't link to literature from someone who knows what they're talking about and actually had a sensible position on the matter where they could debate and claim brains are something other than computers. And then when I tried to say minds are software, again, no one even seemed to understand the claim, and they certainly didn't know of any expert literature that knows what those words mean and then could respond to it and disagree with it, or agree with it and say how that's compatible with veganism. If you want to know about the Turing principle, read The Fabric of Reality by David Deutsch. There are a couple people who seem to have read Deutsch before, or to know something about the Turing principle or something, but they still were like very silly. It didn't seem to help, which was sad. The Turing stuff is basically that there are universal computers that can compute everything that can be computed by a computer. So all the computers have the same repertoire of what calculations they can do. Like Macs, PCs, iPhones, Androids, Linux, Intel CPUs, ARM CPUs, Motorola CPUs, all can do the same calculations. The CPU in my microwave has the same repertoire of calculations. So you can't differentiate different animals or animals and humans based on the brain being able to calculate things for humans but not animals. All of them have universal classical computer brains. That part, by the way, sounds pretty good for the animal rights people, if that's as far as you go in analyzing. But none of them seem to understand that or be able to talk about it. But yeah, humans can create knowledge, whereas animals can't. Humans are universal knowledge creators, and animals are not knowledge creators at all, which is typical with a jump to universality of being able to either do it or not do it. Just like with computers, there aren't like 50% computers that are like can do half the things. Computers go straight from almost zero features to every single feature in terms of what it can compute. But none of them understood that or engaged with it. And none of them had. But see, I wanted to keep it simpler and ask just, so the AGI field, the artificial general intelligence researchers are trying to create a general intelligence. So they have a concept of a general intelligence as opposed to not a general intelligence. So the question that I really wanted to ask them, and I thought would be easier to understand, is there anything an animal has ever done to indicate it has general intelligence instead of lacking general intelligence? Like, is there any behavior that would require general intelligence that an animal has done? And there were no answers to that, no literature. And what a decent chunk of people said back to that was, I'm not convinced that humans have general intelligence. Prove to me that humans are better than robots. Prove to me that humans can think. Prove to me that humans deserve any moral worth or welfare or anything. Prove to me that humans can suffer. Which, it's hard to tell how much that's just a dishonest debating tactic and how much it's they actually don't understand the value of humans. But like, if you don't understand the value of humans, that should fucking disturb you, and you should like want an answer. You shouldn't just be throwing that around as a debating tactic. You should be like, holy shit, this is a problem with my worldview. Like, they just seem to be gloating, like, if I can attack humans and bring them down to the level of animals and robots, then it proves animals are great and important just as much as humans. And they just see how that, like, helps the animal cause. They seem to lose sight of what that means for humans, and that's, like, a real problem for civilization. No, I don't follow Elon Musk, like, hardly at all. He's an idiot. And he's sure involved with the government enough, getting, like, government subsidies for Tesla and dealing with the government with SpaceX. People, like, seem to think he's some sort of capitalist businessman icon or whatever. But he works with the government like a lot, and so he's actually more of a social climber, political favors, knows people in power, etc. kind of guy, as far as I can tell. Like, the whole point of the Tesla company, not the whole point, but a significant point of it, is to capitalize on a bunch of government subsidies for green car shit. Yeah, I've seen a couple of his things that were bad science. Okay, so I concluded that there's like a lack of discussion and debate in the world and lack of interest in it. I thought that a lot of the discussions with the vegans and animal rights advocates was representative. It fits my experience trying to bring up other topics with other people. I think it's really sad, but I just find that non-FI forums are kind of like that in general. And third, animal rights advocates broadly don't know anything about computers and software and haven't tried to update their thinking to take that stuff into account. Sad. And anyways, I think the discussion tree approach is good, and I encourage people to do that. And you could do something kind of like what I did. Pick a topic, make a discussion tree, see if anyone can give counterarguments, can add nodes to your tree by a variety of forms, including FI. So I'm hoping people will actually do that. I think it would be a good idea. So here's the original discussion tree I made. So at the beginning we've got Peter Singer, and then I've got some comments on his position, and then we have also some of the things he said, and then there's more that he said on my response, and so on, and there's back and forth, and then here's a second paper by him. Because I was like, this is old, maybe he updated based on like modern info about computers that's more recent than 1973. So he wrote something in 2003, but then I look at it and he didn't update, and then I recorded what some of his arguments were and asked some questions, and I pointed out, the main thing I pointed out is that Peter Singer's arguments were incomplete. That was the main purpose of this tree, and I was hoping that people would have some sources I could add to my tree to make it more complete. Even if they were wrong, at least like, what is the next argument? How did they try to address this? And then I'll say what's wrong with it and so on. But I literally couldn't get any answers that were worth adding to the tree. But I think the tree itself is a very good idea. You should try it. And if you want to try it, I'm using the app MindNode. I don't know why Spotlight is so fucking slow. It's not slow on my laptop, it's just on this computer that has some extra external hard drives plugged in. I don't know if that's the problem somehow. I'm clicking on my desktop and it's not going to Finder. Anyway, so here's the second one I made. This is after I talked with people a bunch. I decided to make a diagram for some of the stuff that they kept bringing up, which was somewhat different stuff. So there were like 3 main branches. So is it okay to breed and slaughter cows and chickens? Yes, because animals don't have moral importance like humans. That's like the beginning. And then there's 3 main answers I got from people. Actually, this is not something that many of them said, but it's something I think that they should try to say, like it's worth a try. Animals have moral value because they're intelligent. Then what a lot of them say is animals have moral value because they can suffer. And then a lot of them say animals have moral value because they're conscious. Sometimes they say sentient. Sometimes they say can feel pain. They tend to use the words pain and suffering fairly interchangeably. And they don't really try to think through what they mean and differentiate things like nerve signals versus mental reactions and like interpretations in the mind and opinions and stuff like that in terms of pain and suffering. Like pain is a physical process of nerve signals sending information to the brain, or like painful thoughts, painful state of mind. They don't really differentiate if pain is a physical state of the body or a like software state of the mind or something different, because they don't think in those terms, so they can't really answer or discuss anything productively. But anyways, so I made this tree with these 3 different main parts, and then I went through and answered them with a bunch of branches. So like here, I'm like, I say this, and then there's a yes, go on, and there's 2 different reasons they say no. And if I say this, then they say yes, and I say yes, and there's a yes and a no answer. So I was going through, like, here's a no answer, and here's a no answer. Like, I was going through and trying to give, here are a lot of the arguments people make, and then here's the counter argument, and so on, and organize it. So I made this, and I got, 0 responses that engage with it. The first one also, I got 0 responses that actually engaged with the tree I made. They were never like, here is a specific node you said, let me quote a sentence you said in that node, and then let me give you a response that I think is a response worthy of being in your tree as a response to that node. Like, they never did that a single time. They were never specific about what they're arguing with. I asked them repeatedly, like a bunch of people, I was like, could you point out which node you disagree with? Or there were a couple threads I made also using this one. So I said, in the comments below, reply saying which is the first sentence you disagree with and why you disagree. People are very bad at following instructions and were largely unwilling to do this. Some of them would say things like, you didn't argue your case, you just made statements. It's like, right, I was trying to state my view to find out what we disagree about. And then if you tell me the first thing you disagree about, I will argue why I'm right and you're wrong. But they wouldn't do that or couldn't do that. Or some of them, they just got stuck on the first sentence, minds are software, which it's not really that they disagreed with it, they just don't understand what computers are enough to know what that means. Oh, there's a reason for the suffering thing. I mean, there's probably multiple reasons, and you might be partly right, but that comes up in Singer in 1973, and I think a lot of people are just following him. Like his animal liberation article is really influential. So I think he kind of spread the idea. And the reason he goes for focusing on suffering, not intelligence, um, it makes sense. It's plausible from a perspective. Like I don't agree with that knowing CR and stuff, but I can see why it would seem reasonable to people. And the issue is, in their view, intelligence is a matter of degree. So like humans are 100 points of intelligence. Well, I shouldn't use 100 because it's not like a maximum. It's just a matter of degree on a scale. So humans are like 230 points of intelligence. And then dogs are like 120 points of intelligence. And then rats are like 75 points of intelligence. So they view the world kind of like that. And if you view the world that way, it's hard to pick a cutoff point. Like, why arbitrarily, when you reach 173 points of intelligence, do you suddenly have moral worth, and before that you didn't? So to them, it makes sense to say that animals have less moral worth, but still some, because this stuff is a matter of degree. So that's how they see intelligence. And the view of intelligence that way is like really quite common. So I don't think that that reveals that they're terrible people for thinking that or something like that. So their answer to that is picking an amount of intelligence that grants moral value is arbitrary. Therefore, we should look for something else. For example, can it suffer? If it can suffer, then we shouldn't make it suffer, which seems kind of reasonable. A lot of the focus is on suffering, but they do sometimes mention pleasure as well on the flip side. Like, if it can feel pleasure, then, it matters whether it feels pleasure or not. I think they often see that as related and assume, like, if it can feel pain or suffering, then also it can feel pleasure. And how much pleasure it has and how much lack of suffering it has both matter. But they do usually talk about suffering. By the way, people use the word sentient sometimes, which is kind of a vague word. Like, you might think that they mean consciousness by it, in which case they should just say consciousness. However, someone defined to me saying sentient meant capable of feeling pain, which I thought was a really weird definition for the word sentient. But it played into that emphasis on suffering. Anyways, my answer to all of this is humans are qualitatively different in terms of intelligence. They have general intelligence, whereas animals do not. And if I was going to go into more detail, I would say that humans can create knowledge, whereas animals do not create knowledge. Knowledge creating processes, in short, are evolution. Knowledge is created by replication with variation and selection. So biological evolution is a knowledge creating process, but animals don't do evolution themselves. Like, they're born with the knowledge from evolution, but then during their life, the animal doesn't learn anything, it doesn't create new knowledge. Humans, however, our minds, our brains, our mental software is capable of evolving ideas. So we do replication with variation and selection of ideas, and no animals do that. So we're able to evolve new knowledge during our lifetimes, whereas animals can't. But just even setting that aside, you can say things like humans have general intelligence and animals don't. Like, you can find ways to look at intelligence as a binary trait. And also, you can say humans have intelligence in a sense that rocks do not. And even if you're going to lump dogs in with humans, you could still have a binary trait there and say, like, humans and dogs both have some sort of intelligence that a rock doesn't and a tree doesn't. So you can differentiate human and dog from rock and tree. Like, that's not wrong. It's not a full analysis, but it isn't wrong. So the focus on only matters of degree is bad, I think, but very common. Anyway, so I could not get answers to this post from people. Yeah, the Cambridge Declaration on Consciousness was an appeal to authority I got several times. And it makes like logic errors and shows blatant ignorance of computation stuff. But there was this comment I got from someone. This was signed by just 12 scientists. They couldn't get more than that. Seems to indicate that most disagree, question mark. Elsewhere, one of the signatories contradicts the declaration. So that was an amusing comment. That's something that came up in Lindzen videos. So he pointed out he might have done it with two different ones. So there's these like pro global warming statements, and they'll get like 100 scientists to sign it. And he said if you look at the names on the list, a bunch of them are not experts in the field, they're just some other type of scientist. And then if you look at the ones who are experts in the field, and then you go look at what they wrote elsewhere, you will find that they contradict the declaration. And he gave some examples of actual climate scientists who had signed the declaration saying things that contradict it. Because the declarations are always like global warming is totally real and we're certain of it. And then when these people actually do work in the field, they don't want to be like incompetents who got fired, so they have to say things that are truer than that. Like, we don't actually know how cloud feedbacks work all that well. There's a lot of uncertainty here. So it contradicts their propaganda declarations. Oh, also recently, I put up this post called Potential Debate Topics. This is quite relevant to you, Alex, because I'll bet you could find at least one thing here that you disagree with or have some doubts about. Because you've said before that you like agree with me about everything, but I bet somewhere on this list there's something that you don't know or don't agree with, or it sounds wrong to you, something you could debate or argue about or have questions about or something. So yeah, I was hoping that someone would want to debate me since I put up my new debate policy, which I've been very happy with because I like to have a nice error correction mechanism so I can say to people, you seem dumb, I'm not going to talk to you, but if I'm wrong, here's this error correction mechanism. So I'm finding that useful, I've been using it. The thing I'm going to add to this once I put up the article is a good way to get my attention without meeting the whole policy is to make a discussion tree. Can you just rewatch the video? But in short, I said that this post has a bunch of topics where you probably disagree with me about more than 0 of them. This post is like not that comprehensive, but it was just like I thought of stuff for like a week or whatever. But it wasn't like a thorough search of all the topics. I always forget some of the shit people disagree about because there's so many. But yeah, I've said before that there's something for everyone to hate here. Like there's something that anyone could get alienated by. Like even if someone agrees with me about a bunch of stuff, there's like always gonna be something else that when they first arrive, they don't know or it sounds wrong to them or whatever. So the kind of person who like if there's a major disagreement about something important, they get offended or alienated or whatever. Like that person cannot come to FI. It's never gonna work because they're always gonna find out something like Trump, psychiatry, parenting, relationships, atheism, liberalism, capitalism, induction. Somewhere in that list and all these other things, it's gonna like violate a taboo for someone. It's gonna cross their line. For the people who like really aren't into unbounded criticism and don't want to tolerate like certain disagreements, I just have so many things that should trigger one of the things that make them say, you're a crank idiot, goodbye. Someone commented down here So they scored 1 point if they agreed with me, and half a point if they partly agreed, and 0 for disagreeing. And they came up with 35.5 out of 86. That's like 40%-ish ballpark. They didn't say if they think that's high or low. I think it's kind of high for like most people. Like I'd expect most people to disagree more than that. RSD? Like real social dynamics? Like a specific person? Why are they going to call you? I don't know what's going on. Like Tyler or... You can't say yes to like 6 questions. Maybe you said it right when you heard one, but there's a stream delay. Okay, well, why? Why are they gonna call you? What's the issue? What do you want to talk to them about? Are you trying to get like dating advice or what? I don't know what you're talking about, internet rules, but it's RSD Tyler, not Taylor, if that's what you're trying to talk about. Like, I'm definitely not misremembering that. The RSD Tyler. Well, why? What did you email them about? Why are they calling it? You haven't said what the issue is. How's the quality, by the way? I went back to YouTube and I set it to 1080p 60, and then I lowered the stream delay to the lowest setting. And the main concern with doing that is if the quality is worse. So, like, how good is this text? In people's opinions, how readable? The bitrate is 12,000, no problem, which should be enough. But YouTube doesn't want it to be that high, so they like downgrade it when they encode it. And they have to downscale because of 1080p, whereas my monitor is 1440. Well, it's 2880, but it downscales perfectly to 1440. It's a Retina monitor. Oh, did you have it not on like source quality or whatever, or 1080p? I don't know if I had it on the right setting before. Let me go. Okay, so this is high quality. But okay, so this is high quality. Need some text to show up. But okay, so this is high quality. Need some text to show up. But that's not bad at all. So this is high quality. Need some text to show up. I'd like it to be better, but that seemed acceptable. Okay, so there was this FI thread today, spending Christmas with relatives. So I was going to do a bit of an overview of this as like a walking people through recent discussions thing, so maybe they'll see what FI is like more and take an interest. So this person, the reason that I wrote a follow-up on this post, which I talked about earlier in the stream, was because this person linked to it. They said their relatives do this pattern, which makes sense. It's super common. Although, the weird thing about it is this part. See, most people don't say this. If you say, what do you think about X, and they say silent, normally you don't follow up. Normally, I don't follow up in a normal social situation, because that's like a bit pushy, which is what that person was complaining about below. The context where I follow up, why didn't you discuss X, is discussion forums, and it's in particular when they keep talking about something else. I'm like, hey, wait, you're changing the topic, why didn't you discuss X? Like, that's the normal reason I do it. Like, they come to FI, it's an intellectual discussion forum. By posting there, they're implying their interest in intellectual discussion and that they're open to being asked questions and so on. So in that context, it is okay to respond to them not following up on something with a follow-up question, why didn't you discuss X? Like, but in a normal social situation, that's overly aggressive and will like offend people, and most people won't say it. I did a few streams on Twitch as a test. They were all uploaded to YouTube. So if you're following my YouTube, you should be able to find all of them there. It's like it's the last like 3, I think. So 42, 43, 44. But everything is on my YouTube channel. And also they were linked on like Discord when I streamed. And they were linked on my Twitch, probably. I mean, Twitter. Maybe not. I might have not set that Zapier thing up. Anyway, so the person says that their relatives do this question ignoring discussion pattern. So this is actually a sign that the person is overly aggressive and socially uncalibrated with people who have not asked for an intellectual discussion and don't want one. No, I was not unbanned from that Discord. I messaged those 2 people and I was ignored. I commented on an Ask Yourself video and I did a tweet and I was ignored. So, still banned. I have no interest in following up more than that. I did ask other people to ask about it and complain or whatever if they wanted to. So, you're welcome to try, but I'm moving on, and I don't like to try very hard to pursue people who are irrational and ban you and whatever. Like, if they're that low quality, then who cares? So it's not very interesting. If your question is just how I would do at a voice debate in general, you know, someone else could debate me who's less dumb than them anyways. But there's a lack of interest in that. Like on a couple of my previous streams, I invited people to the Discord voice chat to debate with me if anyone wanted to or ask questions or something. Because I think I have it set up to work now, so I should be able to stream talking in Discord voice chat. So yeah, if someone actually wanted to debate me about something, I could go on voice like now. Oh, Twitch has zoom in and YouTube doesn't? That's interesting. Yeah, there's definitely pluses and minuses. Twitch and YouTube are both better at some things and worse at some things. What do you want to debate, Alex? Did you find anything on my blog post list? Going back to this email, they were sort of asking about how to deal with relatives pressuring them to visit for Christmas. And there are already immediately signs that they deal with relatives incorrectly, that they're making some mistakes. FYI, last time I talked to you when you were driving, there were like audio quality issues intermittently. So I would rather do it if you had better audio quality for the stream. Also, I don't want you to like crash your car because you're debating. Like, are you texting and driving right now? Because I would advise you not to do that, by the way. It's very hard to change arguments into syllogisms because syllogisms are too limited. I do not agree with that attitude. And there's a lot of things wrong with it. Like, first of all, have you done anything to objectively test your driving skill? Like, done racing or had a professional evaluate your driving or something? A professional, like, you know, a race car driver teacher type of person? So presumably nothing like that. So I don't think you really know how good of a driver you are. Second of all, like a lot of people think they're good drivers and they're bad drivers because they don't know to evaluate the driving attributes that they don't realize are important. Like they're bad at the things they don't know that they should be good at, so then they miss those when they self-evaluate. So self-evaluations tend to be really unreliable. Then further, the idea is implied here, if you're a pro driver, then your skill makes you safe. Something like that. Like you won't crash because you're good at driving. However, a lot of accidents are because someone else hits you or someone else does something wrong. Like it doesn't have to be that you made an error. Um, However, of the accidents, when someone else does something wrong, like they cut into your lane or something retarded, like 50% of those, I don't know the real number, that's completely made up, but a decent number of those are avoidable if you're really on top of things. Like if you're super alert, you can avoid getting hit even though the other person fucks up really badly. Whereas if you're distracted, you might let them hit you or something stupid. And I think texting while driving is like a serious matter, not a joking matter also. Private internet access is the VPN I use, see? Private internet access. So people are switching VPNs over the purchase. That's concerning. Okay, so PO is bought by Cape, who is allegedly like a malware infector. That sucks. Molvad. I'm just going to pocket this. This guy is worried about Christmas relatives bugging him, pressuring him, wanting him to visit, etc. And he asked about other people's experiences with it, and he showed a kind of one-sided perspective where he is looking at it from like they're annoying to me, but not so much from like I'm annoying to them or I might be mistreating them. And there's signs that he's kind of rationalistic and in favor of criticizing people who don't want criticism. See, they get defensive / emotional when I criticize. Then why are you criticizing them? If they don't want it and they don't like it, don't talk to them. Don't tell them things they don't want to hear. It's not like they're on FI where they've like people are inconsistent sometimes. So sometimes they say they want criticism, but also they don't. And like, I sympathize a lot with giving criticism in that situation. It's hard to always get it right. And like if someone comes to FI, there's a very strong implication there that they want criticism. And if they come to FI and they don't want criticism, they shouldn't be here. Like they need to actually leave. They can't just post on FI while not wanting criticism. That's not okay. That's not what the forum's for. You can't like come to FI and ask people not to criticize you. But like most of the world is not at all like FI. If you're dealing with your relatives at Christmas, they can totally say, I don't want to hear your criticism of my politics and my being pro-life or being pro-abortion or whatever it is. Anyways, they asked about this Christmas stuff, and they got some responses, so I'm going to quickly go through. How independent are you? People will hold judges, so like if you alienate them, you could have problems in the future. If you want stuff from those people, you could get disinherited. If you go like decades just ignoring them. Also, what are you doing with your life anyway? You don't seem very actively interested in philosophy. They did not answer this question. I've read the rest of the thread. They didn't answer this question. You don't seem very actively interested in philosophy. They did not deny this. They did not comment on it. They did not agree with it. If you're doing anything else important, you aren't sharing it for critical discussion. Again, no denial, no agreement, no comment, which in my opinion means not taking it very seriously. It being philosophy and critical discussion. Oh no, it's not. Sorry. It being anything else important. So if they're doing something in their life other than philosophy, that's important, but they don't share it for critical discussion. That shows not taking it seriously. Why is it important to you not to waste time on Christmas? This is a question, and it's a perfectly valid answer to this to say it's not important to me. But the person assumed that this meant it is important to you. I can tell from your post it's important to you, but you're wrong. Like, why do you think that? Sort of like that. They took it that way. Which I think is unfair, but they were trying to be really pedantic. So it's like double unfair to not really respond to what someone literally said, but also be pedantic about it. So they said they basically don't care if they alienate their family. Sounds rationalistic and probably a little bit unrealistic. Like not fully unrealistic, but some. Anyway, they said I didn't say it was important to me to not waste time on Christmas. I mean, this is literally a true statement, but it doesn't answer any of the questions. And it doesn't even say whether it is important to them or not. Sugar and diabetes. I cannot remember offhand if that's one of the myth ones or if that's one of the real ones. Because some of the things like sort of that sound like that are myths and some aren't, I think. And I have not looked into these very much, but I might have looked into that into some myth, but maybe it was something else I can't remember. Let me ask someone. I think I know someone who knows. Oh yeah, that one is a myth. The person said I was remembering correctly. So yeah, I've looked into that before and it was a myth. I think that my friend did more of the research, but I did a little. But yeah, as you can tell, I don't remember the specific arguments. You just look at the research and it's all crap, basically. They're telling me to, as a reminder, if you do have diabetes, then you have to watch your sugar intake. They just have some correlation studies and bad explanations. So, for example, suppose that sugar is correlated with diabetes and getting diabetes. Does that mean sugar causes getting diabetes? Not necessarily. Obesity is also correlated with getting diabetes. Maybe sugar causes obesity, like sugar is correlated with being obese. Like people who eat a lot of sugar tend to be more obese. And then obesity causes diabetes, but sugar doesn't if you actually eat the right number of calories per day, for example, possibility. You have to read it and it makes actual sense. I've done this before. Maybe it was with someone else. There was, oh, it was the global warming debate, wasn't it? Where I linked to the chemistry study. There's plenty of good science. It's just not in the social sciences and it's not in nutrition. I think it was the global warming. Chemistry. No, shit. Oh, this is the wrong one. Well, productive, this one. Here we go. I'll give you this link. So this is a paper I found. It was literally the first one I found when I was searching for an example of science that wasn't trash. Because they said, do you have an example of a paper that meets that standard? Could be in any field. And I said David's physics papers, and then I found this one by searching for the words chemistry and atoms and then clicking on something. And this one was called Recent Advances in the Chemistry of Electronically Excited Atoms. If you look, it's from 1970, and if you look through it, it seems like pretty fucking legit. And then if you compare this to a correlation study on diabetes, it's not very similar. And this is not like a particularly CR paper. Like I don't remember noticing anything CR about it. But then there's a thing I quoted on a little bit. Oh, this was something interesting. So the person said the first 3 sentences and their brain checked out already. That's not necessarily a bad sign. Like if there's technical jargon that's hard to understand, that can be a sign of like real science. Like they actually know what they're talking about. But you can try to tell the difference between technical jargon you don't understand, which is how chemistry stuff looks to me, some of it, and technical jargon like the social sciences use, where they just make up a bunch of stupid words to make their text more confusing. But you can actually translate it into simple words and see that it's empty. Anyways, it specifically had this part where I was basically saying, before we go into details, we're going to tell you how to judge and think about the details. So they're giving like info that helps the reader understand what they're saying, which is one of the things I said a good paper would have. And then that paper happened to have it. I posted a Feynman quote recently. I'll take this off screen and search. Here we go. This is Feynman. There's a sociologist who had written a paper for all of us to read, something he had written ahead of time. I started to read the damn thing, and my eyes were coming out. I couldn't make head nor tail of it. I figured it was because I hadn't read any of the books on that list. I had this uneasy feeling of I'm not adequate, until finally I said to myself, I'm going to stop and read one sentence slowly so I can figure out what the hell it means. So I stopped at random and read the next sentence very carefully. I can't remember it precisely, but it was very close to this. The individual member of the social community often receives his information via visual symbolic channels. I went back and forth over it and translated. You know what it means? People read. Then I went over the next sentence and I realized I could translate this one also. Then it became a kind of empty business. Sometimes people read, sometimes people listen to the radio, and so on, but written in such a fancy way that I couldn't understand it at first. And when I finally deciphered it, there was nothing to it. You can catch a lot of social science papers being this. If you pay close attention, you can like translate it and realize it's just a bunch of bullshit. Whereas like with the chemistry paper, you can't do that. It doesn't work. Like I've tried, I've looked at it, but they're not like this. I assume there are some good ones for like, does vitamin A help avoid blindness or something? I think there's some decent knowledge of some of the vitamins being useful. Vitamin C, vitamin D, like those are studied a decent amount, right? So I would look at something like that that's like less controversial and like seems to make sense and stuff. Like if you're missing some of the vitamins, some bad things can happen to your body, like that makes sense. And then people could study what they are. Like similarly, iodine. I've heard that we need iodine and that's why we put iodine in table salt. So there's probably some papers on why iodized salts is important or something. You go like scholar.google.com and you type in like iodized salt. And then you see a paper like risks of iodine-induced hyperthyroidism after correction of iodine deficiency by iodized salt. There's a decent chance this paper will be okay. However, it doesn't appear to have a free PDF, so like I could sci-hub this, but I'm just going to go to the next one. So prevention of endemic gouter with iodized salt. This paper describes a study carried out over 16 years. Hey, that's pretty good. They're like putting fucking effort into this. Of the use of iodized salt for control of endemic goiter in a valley of the Himalayan foothills. From 1956, salt was fortified with either potassium iodide or potassium iodate, provide an estimated daily intake of 200 something or other, some amount. It's a measure, like, I don't think that's milligrams. It's probably like the one under milligrams or something. I don't know what it is. Could be milligrams. Milligrams is just mg though, I think. It's probably like the one under that. I think you need like very tiny amounts of iodine. I think 200 milligrams might be like too much, but I'm not really sure. There was a progressive and significant decline in goiter prevalence, together with a return of the pattern of iodine metabolism to within normal limits. It is concluded that it works. So this is a correlation, but it's reasonable, and there is, I believe, as background, some understanding of how iodine matters. But even if there isn't, it's a completely plausible thing that like our body uses iodine. It's not hard to make up an explanation that makes sense. Our body needs various nutrients as inputs so it can build like cells and whatever out of them. A keto diet or a vegan diet on health outcomes would be very hard to study. That'd be far harder than this. And you're going to have a lot of conflicting factors. Like you can kind of imagine that lifestyle factors don't affect that much whether you get a gouter or not. Like it could just be the iodine pretty much. I don't know if they did a control or not. I haven't read this yet, but whereas with like the keto diet or the vegan diet or whatever, like people on a vegan diet are probably like more likely to exercise or something like that, you know? Like people are trying hard in regards to diet will also try hard in regards to exercise, and they'll go to the doctor more and whatever else. Like It's similar to how there are these studies that correlate like drinking wine with good health or something. It's like the type of middle class people who are drinking like a cup of red wine with dinner are just on average going to be healthier because drinking a cup of red wine with dinner is like associated with higher socioeconomic status, like not being a poor idiot, and it is associated with like certain lifestyles and values and stuff that just tend to be a bit healthier than some other people. Like you probably don't get a lot of like really poor people being vegan. Being vegan is probably and keto are probably both associated with being like middle class at least. So that's going to be a major confounding variable. You can try to control for it. You could be like, well, we're going to compare these vegan diets to like random people from the middle class. But it's like hard to control. It's hard to define middle class and like find people in it accurately. And you're going to have problems like, okay, so vegans are probably less likely to smoke or something. Vegans are probably less likely to be obese and overeat. So like factors like that are going to mess it up even if you only compare to other middle class people. Vegans are probably more likely to be young. You're going to have like age as a factor, and like there's so many things. Vegans are probably more likely to be women, if I had to guess. I don't know. Could be wrong. How do you objectively choose your diet? In my opinion, like broadly, we have a lot of healthy foods and they're all good. I think people are overly concerned about it. I think it's quite easy to get nutritious food in a variety of ways. Like you just don't have to try that hard. And just don't eat when you're not hungry and don't overeat on quantity. And you should probably be okay. I think it takes like quite a bit of work or like very peculiar dietary habits to like manage to just, get no vitamin A or something, like cause a deficiency. You have to be careful if you're vegan because like not eating any meat or eggs or whatever is actually a peculiar dietary habit with a risk of causing a vitamin deficiency or something. But if you eat like a normal foods, a variety of foods, you should be fine. There's a couple of specific exceptions, like maybe there's a lot of people with magnesium shortages or iron shortages or vitamin D. I forget which of those ones, but there's like certain things that normal diets don't necessarily do a great job with, a couple of them. So like vitamin supplements or blood work monitoring or whatever for those specific things could be reasonable. Especially if there's a problem associated with one of those deficiencies that you have, that would be a good reason to check. But I think a wide variety of diets are just fine and normal and about as good as other ones. And if there isn't great info about which are better than others, like you don't need to optimize it. Like your body needs food, it needs a bunch of different vitamins. If you get them, it should be okay. It's quite a robust system in this regard. So I don't think you need to worry about the details. I think the people who think like if you eat a little bit different diet, you'll like suddenly have a lot more energy and be super healthy and whatever. Like I think that's just bullshit, and that diet doesn't have that big of an effect. Like diet has a big effect if you like overeat by a lot, undereat by a lot, or like never get any iodine, or never don't get enough vitamin A because 70% of your diet is rice of the non-golden variety. Things like that make a big difference. But I think most diets just don't make that big a difference. I'd stay away from vegan diet though. I'd stay away from keto. I would just eat a variety of things. I mean, unless you like hate carbs or something. Is keto the carb one or did I mix it up? I don't pay that much attention. The no carb one I meant. Yeah, it's the high fat one, low carb one. Like I think it's okay to eat on the high side of meat if you want to, like more than the average person. If you like it, that's fine. But I wouldn't go like super hardcore into keto. I wouldn't recommend that. Especially not for like health purposes. If you're doing it for diet purposes, it's a bit different. The reason a lot of the diet things work is they just restrict what you can eat. Like if you can only eat some foods and not others, then you tend to eat less. And it like breaks people's normal rhythms and like if you can only eat meat not bread, then it prevents certain snacks. So like you snack less. It's stuff like that. People have like eating habits, and then a lot of these diets like break their habit and get them to eat differently, which causes some of their overeating to not happen. Because when your eating isn't hunger based enough, you can just like cut out some snacks if your like schedule changes sort of, and then not replace them because you're not hungry. It's not actually a problem. People have a lot of eating habits, like 3 meals a day with rough meal times, plus snacks, plus having like drinks with their meals, like sodas. And a lot of those habits involve overeating, or a lot of what happens to people is it's okay when they're like 15, and then as they get older, they keep the same eating habits and then they start getting fatter. So for people who have that problem and they're chronically overeating by habit, things like a keto diet or a variety of other things that are like significantly restrictive in some way can like break their habits and make them eat in a different way, which can help. But it's not really the best way to do it. It's just something that can work for a lot of people without them actually understanding what their problem is, without challenging a lot of their like standard thinking. Just from the claim, I would say it's crap research before I even read a word of it. Like, I would be very suspicious, but all right, let's see. Okay, so it's mice. Mice, not humans. I don't think mice are a super accurate proxy for this. I don't know how bad they are. If this was a really good study, I think they might tell me how bad they are. Like, how good or bad of a proxy are mice for this is something the study should probably be telling me instead of leaving me to guess. I suspect they're leaving me to guess because they're hoping I'll overestimate how good a proxy mice are for humans and like assume it's just a good proxy and they just mention mice once and move on. Maybe. We'll see. Oh, this isn't the study. It looks sort of like one up here, but this is just a news article. So if I was going to evaluate this, I would find the actual study journal reference. So here's the actual study. I'm not going to read the journal. This is just some like reporter. Oh, good night, Alex. Anyways, this is just some reporter writing an article and like summarizing the research. It's much harder to tell if the research is any good when it's translated by some idiot reporter. So sometimes they don't even link like the actual info, but in this case they did, so that's good. That makes it easier. So I'll share the actual link in YouTube chat. You can, if you look through like the FI archives and the Curie blog archives and stuff, you will find some analysis of some studies. You can get a few examples of things getting analyzed before. And I've done some on like videos as well, like in the 12 Rules for Life videos. I looked at like some serotonin study that Peterson linked, and I think a couple others. Just a sec. I was getting more messages about diabetes. I'm just going to show you a couple. Okay, so why don't you think about this? I'm just gonna put this over to the side somewhere, and you can think about this and try to evaluate it, and I'll come back to it after I look at the keto stuff. It's from right here. This. So I will get the link. Control X. All right. Here's the link. Anyways, you can say a lot about this without actually clicking the link to the study, just from this quote. Okay, now onto the keto thing. Putting mice on a keto diet. I want to get this so I can see if there's a new Discord message. So this will do. Now I can see the bottom clearly. Sugar tastes better, so it's probably more valuable. Yeah, that's true, internet. But note that this says that they controlled for factors such as obesity, exercise, and overall calorie consumption. So they're saying that in this study they took into account obesity, exercise, and how many calories you eat, and they still found a correlation between sugar after like making those factors not matter anymore. Which the ways they make those factors not matter anymore like involve statistics, and I think they're questionable. But let's just assume that they actually did that. Like there's things you can criticize without trying to question that. And the way they do that is not like fully invalid. Like I think it has flaws, but like it's partly works. Okay, keto diet mice. Oh, that got really big. All right, well it fits. Okay, so our immune responses to infections are influenced by several extrinsic factors. By extrinsic, I think it's just a fancy-ass word for external. External, first synonym. Not part of the essential nature, coming from the outside, lying outside, arising outside. Yeah. I do not think this is good, no. So, spoiler, there are problems with it that you could find. Just from those paragraphs. And the very broad overview of what's wrong with it is that it is a correlation study, and they ruled out supposedly these three factors, but there are infinity other factors that they did not consider, and it should be reasonably easy, I think, to come up with some hypothetical factor that would make sugar not be the issue that they did not control for. You can just think of things that they didn't think of and missed, and like the sort of assumption of these studies is they controlled for everything important and they just didn't. If YouTube fucks with you, you can just talk on Discord, by the way. I'll see it. It's fine. That's the worst part about YouTube instead of Twitch, I think, is that the chat fucks with you more. think Twitch like lets your messages through better. Anyways, okay, so external factors including weather, social interactions, and diet. So the first thing I noticed about this sentence is the word influenced. By influenced, they mean correlated with. It's one of the many words that they use to say correlated with without saying it. So these are not causal factors. This does not mean that weather or, quote, social interactions or diet causes different immune responses to influenza or to infections. I guess this said infections, even though this thing was about flu. I don't know why that, whatever. Anyways. Yeah, those things seem reasonably true. I would kind of assume that high sugar supply does mean people eat it, or they wouldn't produce it, or they'd like export it or something. If it wasn't being eaten, like, unless there's some other use of sugar. But sure, foods high in sugar could have some other thing in them. That is possible. So like what foods have sugar? Like what things in food correlate with sugar? Like do foods with more sugar tend to have more vitamin C? I have no idea. It's just a hypothetical. Do foods with more sugar tend to have lower iodine? I have no idea, just a hypothetical. Etc. etc. So they did not control for factors like that. Or like they have no way to check that kind of thing. So here we see correlation and things where they have no causal mechanism that they are going to explain, I'm pretty sure. They're saying weather correlates with something. What's the causal mechanism from weather to immune responses? What are social interactions? Like, how do you even define social interactions? Like, they're not talking about small talk, like, they're studying mice. So just like being in the same cage with another mouse, or like sniffing the other mouse's butt. Like, how many times per day do you sniff the other mouse's butt? Is that social interactions? Do mice sniff each other's butts like dogs do? I don't even know. Maybe not. But like, right, so how are they actually measuring social interactions, and what is the causal mechanism from those? If there's a causal mechanism from those, it might be like higher stress responses or like more cortisol or some shit, and then some causal mechanism from there. And it says diet, so that's quite a big vague thing. Anyways. Wait, it's lethal influenza infection? But influenza is a virus, and infection refers to bacteria, I thought. Am I wrong? Like, not an expert here, but this sounds wrong to me. Let's search for infection. Maybe infection is just anything, virus or bacteria? Is the flu caused by a bacterial or viral infection? Okay, I guess infection might just be both. Alright, the word infection is just generic. Alright, fine. They're looking at the immune response in the lungs and some sort of cell. The fuck is that? Y Greek character T. Can you just Google these? Delta. Y delta T cells. Using mice lacking Y delta T cells, the authors have established the functional importance of these cells in conferring protection. Oh, so they compare mice that just don't have those cells at all and see how they do with the flu? And then the mice with the good diet get more of the cells, the mice with the bad diet get fewer of the cells, and the mice with none of the cells, like, die, or whatever, get sick more. Airway epithelial cells. Oh, this is the kind of jargon that I think is legit, like epithelial cells and Y delta T cells. I don't think this is like the social sciences where they just make up stupid words. This seems real to me. Okay, I don't know why they have these two different things in a row, but they're kind of repetitive. Right, internet, but if it's available, why would it be available if it wasn't being consumed? Like, if people are making too much sugar and it just like rots and gets thrown away, they're gonna stop making so much sugar or they're gonna export it to other countries. They're not just gonna continuously make too much available and like waste a bunch. Getting sent some typos. So let's fix this. Garen search. The find replace over here. Oh yeah, that colon is totally a typo. Fixed. Oh yes, that should be capitalized. Alright, 2 typos fixed. Thank you. And deployed. No mention of heredity issues right here, but I don't know why heredity issues would matter when we're doing population-wide studies. Because it seems like everyone's heredity and the whole population would just be included in the numbers. It's possible that the random sample is biased for heredity by like bad luck or something, and that they didn't check. I don't know. Or I mean, they never use actually non-random samples, so it's possible that their non-random, partially random sample was biased due to, in terms of heredity of diabetes issues, in a way that they didn't check for that mattered. Like if you're taking voluntary signups for a study related to diabetes, you're more likely to get people who actually care about diabetes, like people whose grandfather had diabetes are maybe more likely to sign up for the study, so that could cause problems. Otherwise, it's partially random. It's like if you pay them a small amount of money to participate in your study, then you're going to get more poor people who the money actually matters to, for example. Or there's a lot of psych studies that get a bunch of college students to participate, partially because that's where they like advertise and look for volunteers, or they pay a little bit of money and college students are poor. And also because people in psych classes are like encouraged to get extra credit by being in studies, or like their own professor is doing a study and asks them to join. So you get like a bias towards college students in a bunch of studies. I would not. So the thing that I thought of when I read this is the availability of sugar could also be correlated very easily with the availability of some other food, say squid, and it could be that squid causes diabetes, not sugar. Like, sugar just correlates with the greater availability of all sorts of food, so you have no idea which one is the actual problem. Like, you could do the identical study and be like, for every 20 calories of squid available per day per person, diabetes levels rose by 1%. It would probably work. Just because it's just greater prosperity, greater food availability of all types correlates with diabetes. That doesn't tell you in any way that sugar is the problem rather than some other food. And it's not necessarily food, but that's just an easy option to argue for. Like, people who can afford more sugar can probably afford more squid, so maybe squid ink causes diabetes. Why not? Okay, so they give mice keto diets. Supposedly it helps fight the flu in some specific way with lung cells. Or more specifically, it causes more cells or more activated cells or something of a particular type, which, if you have none of those cells, it's bad for your flu fighting. Which doesn't actually mean more is better. There's lots of stuff where it's really important to have some of it, but more doesn't actually help. So they may have missed that, but I've only like read the sort of summary stuff, so maybe they didn't. Who knows? There's a lot of medical terminology that seems like legit, but it makes it harder to understand. Dynamine like guanosine triphosphat tripho oh triphosphat wait, sorry. Triphosphat no, sphatase? Sphatase. Oh, triphosphatase. Maybe like that. Oh, triphosphatase. Okay, I figured out the syllables. So it's triphosphatase. 4 syllables. Triphosphatase. I think that's right. It's hard to figure out the syllables, like it's an unfamiliar word. I think this one is guanosine. Dynamine like guanosine triphosphatase. That is critical interferon, IFN. Inducible gene important for the control of primary infections in mice. Most inbred mouse strains, however, lack a functional copy. Extremely successful. Okay, so there's signs here that they know some things about what they're talking about. Like they're talking about certain mice with certain genes succumbing to as few as 100 plaque-forming units, PFU, of this particular flu virus thing. There's a lot of signs here that they actually have some like technical knowledge of what they're doing, and they have lab equipment, and they've isolated different strains and genes and whatever. And they can combine things in test tubes and infect mice with the disease they want to infect them with and see what happens, and so on and so forth. Which is already better than a lot of social science. There's definitely some signs that they did some science. I'm still very suspicious of their conclusion because it sounds implausible to me. But you can see that this is better than a lot of other studies that are just trash. Like, at least in some ways, they know something. Intranasal challenge. Mice that had been fed KD for 7 days before infection. Okay, so now this is fucking interesting. They're saying keto diet helps with flu, and then their sample mice were fed the keto diet for 7 days, and then they were infected with flu. That's how they did their study. Wait. So you feed them a keto diet for 7 days, then you give them the flu, and then when they have the flu, they have less weight loss. Okay, this is starting to make more sense now. So it sounds to me, and this is completely plausible, like maybe the flu tends to cause weight loss, but to some extent, the way it causes weight loss overlaps with keto diet stuff. The keto diet like already did the thing the flu was about to do to you, something kind of like that. So it's sort of like pre-dosing yourself with some of the flu effects. So you're like your body was already used to them for a week, and then you get the flu, and like that part of it doesn't hit you very hard because you already had a similar thing from the keto diet. It's sort of like you put your body through a trauma. The keto diet was like a trauma, and your body had a week to adjust to that one trauma at a time by itself. So then it dealt with the flu trauma. The flu is like 20 traumas at once, right? So then you got like you only have to deal with 19 new traumas from the flu instead of 20, so you get better results in some ways. That seems kind of plausible to me, but that's like a very specific situation. It doesn't seem that applicable to humans and to using the keto diet over time. What are titers? The strength of a solution is determined by titration with a standard substance. The concentration of a substance in a given sample is determined by titration. Concentration of a solution is determined by titration. Okay, so vial titers. Wait, it says noun, the concentration of a solution. Oh, medicine. The concentration of an antibody is determined by finding the highest. Oh, are they saying that viral concentrations were lower? Oh, okay. So it's viral concentrations were lower, and they determined that fact using titration. This is correct. Right here, yeah. That is the general issue with correlation studies, is there could be a million causations, and they don't know which one it is. And if they rule out 5, there's still infinity other possible causes. Transcriptome analysis. Alright, I don't know what the fuck that is, but it sounds real. Let's see. Sum total of all messenger RNA molecules expressed from the genes of an organism. Yep, sounds real. Alright, so a bunch of scientific details that are hard to understand. We did not detect differences in bowel response, blah blah blah. Pulmonary bacterial infections. Alright, let's see what they say about causes. Usually the intro and the conclusion are easier to read. I wonder if they provide their data. A lot of studies don't provide their data, which sucks. Doesn't necessarily mean they're wrong. It's pretty common, but it sucks. Like when they just provide these charts, you ought to be able to have the data and like run it through stats programs yourself. Because you can be pretty misleading if you only give selective charts. So people need to be able to check your work. Like another chart, more charts. Fuck ton of references and notes. Do you request a protocol from this paper from bioprotocol? What does that mean? If you're planning experiments but cannot find a detailed and accurate protocol to follow, you're welcome to use this. Oh, this means they'll like message the authors for you and ask for details so you can try to replicate the experiment because they don't actually give enough detail in the study. I mean, I think this is generic, like because a lot of studies don't give enough detail, so they just put this on everything. But what I really wanted was their data. Are they going to give data? It doesn't look like data. Yeah, I don't think they have a data download, so I think that sucks. Oh wait, article, figures and data, info and metrics, e-letters, PDF. Never mind. Let's see the figures and data section. Well, I see figures. Are they going to have data? Files in this data supplement, Adobe PDF. Click. No, this isn't their fucking data. These are just their summary charts. Like, some of this is good info that they should be sharing, I guess. But they didn't give their actual experimental data. There's no, like, Excel spreadsheet or CSV or whatever the fuck format with their actual raw data. They just give you the summary chart. So that's bad. Info and metrics. E-letters? What's that? Online peer review forum? Do they have any? I don't think anyone wrote an e-letter for this. Alright, go back to the article. Alright, discussion. So now we start reading again and see if that helps. So one of the things I'm wondering is, like, did anything else happen to the mice on keto diet? Is the one thing that happened that they had better flu responses? Or did they lose weight? Did they gain weight? Did they show any behavioral differences? Did their heart rates go up or down or stay the same? Like you could look at a lot of things to maybe learn something about if there's a real effect here, what's the causal mechanism? Because you could find out like keto diet caused lowered heart rate, made them more resistant to flu or something. Although they were specifically talking about those lung cells. So what causes like more lung cells or whatever? Oh yeah, I was wondering if you needed like the more the better, or if it was just you need some instead of none. Because they talked about using mice that don't have the gene for it at all. The mechanism by which KD-induced Y delta C cells enhance lung barrier integrity will require further study. So they're not even sure how those cells help. But they're saying KD meant more of these cells for some reason, which helped. Which could just be false. From what I've seen so far, it's completely compatible with KD meant more of these cells. None of these cells is bad, but fewer of these cells was not the problem in the non-KD mice. I think it seems compatible so far. And it seems Yeah, if they didn't think of that, I would consider that like really bad. How Y delta T cells protects the host against. No, I don't think that narrows it down at all. Like, I think you're mixing up the effect of diabetes once you have it and the initial cause. And squids could have some like poison in them or something. Like sugar is not a poison, but there could easily be some other food with something that's actually bad for us. Or it could be that as we get like more wealth, we stop eating certain foods, we eat less of certain foods. And that one of those foods that we start eating less of had something important in it, maybe. Blaming too much sugar, I find like broadly implausible because when we eat things that are not sugar, such as protein, fat, and complex carbohydrates, our body breaks them down into simple sugars. That is my general understanding of how we get energy out of our food, is we break it all down into sugar. The view of sugar as like a dirty word is kind of unreasonable in general. Like sugar is what our body needs to get energy. And we create like large amounts of it. So eating the thing that our body makes on purpose, I don't, it doesn't make a ton of sense that we'd like eat too much of it and then it would poison us. Like it's not impossible, but it's not where I'd be looking first for a culprit. Right, internet. It could be a non-food thing that correlates with having more money around. Like more calories of sugar available equals more money equals more light bulbs, more iPhones, more microwaves. So if it's like microwaves cause cancer or microwaves cause diabetes or whatever, like maybe microwaves kill certain nutrients in foods in a way that stove cooking doesn't, and then that makes people more susceptible to diabetes. Don't really mean to attack microwaves, but like, when we're just coming up with random culprits, they're on the list. And also, so they say they controlled for exercise. But like, how did they control for exercise? They probably controlled for things like, going to the gym and doing workouts. They probably like gave surveys out. Like they're studying 175 different countries, right? So how the fuck do they do that? They hand out surveys and they ask like, how many times per week did you work out? How long were your workouts? This is not an accurate way to control for exercise. So the next thing they might have also done is like, do you do a blue collar job or a white collar job? Like, do you do exercise at your job? But how well did they do for controlling for things other than explicit workouts and exercise as part of your job, do you think? Because I think quite badly. I do not think they would do a good job of factoring in whether the woman has to go haul water from the well every day and like that extra exercise versus someone who's like at home using a vacuum and a washing machine. Like having to do your laundry in the river is harder work than using a washing machine, so you get more exercise, but I really doubt they factor that in when they controlled for exercise. People in poorer countries just end up doing more exercise in a variety of ways. They end up like chopping more vegetables and shit, peeling more potatoes. That's like extra exercise, a little bit. But when it's like throughout, when there's a lot of like little things where you don't have conveniences and machines to help you, it it adds up to more exercise. If you have to like go outside in the cold and like bring in a couple more logs and put them on the fire, that's a little bit of exercise. Let alone if you actually chop wood sometimes is a type of exercise that could easily have been not factored in to the study. So far overall, I'm thinking it's like a 1 week, a brief use of keto diet, not long term. Although I don't exactly know how 1 week of diet for a mouse or a rat corresponds to a human. Like, would that sort of be comparable to a human being on a uh, a keto diet for a month? Or is it also like a week for a human being on the keto diet? Anyways, I figure it's not long term, like being on a keto diet for years. So they didn't study like long term keto diet. They studied like use the keto diet short term right before you get the flu. And then for whatever reason that they don't know, it helps fight off the flu or get hurt less or whatever in some specific way. So just like do a thing that affects your body in some way, and then it seems to help with a specific threat. Doesn't mean you're healthier or safer overall, like maybe you're more vulnerable to some other diseases. Oh, yeah, that sucks, but yeah, I completely understand what you're saying. More walking makes sense. So yeah, they probably didn't factor all of the walking in very well to exercise. So it could easily be that more sugar calories available per day correlates to less walking that is not part of workouts. Oh, they probably factored exercise wrong. If they're surveying people on how much they work out, they're probably like uh viewing a lot of first world people as getting more exercise who actually get less exercise. Like they could easily get it reversed. Internet, I would assume that they don't actually study how much these people in 175 different countries exercise in any kind of detail. I think they just give them surveys. Let's try to look. So this was the 2013 study. Why are there two links? Is this? I'm just gonna make a new window. Okay. 2013 study calories. Oh, how many calories should I eat per day? Okay, well I see why they linked it. Using econometric models of repeated cross-sectional data on diabetes and nutritional components of food from 175 countries. Okay, they didn't even survey people. They just found publicly available demographic data for the country's release. So it's like France says we have this many people, and here's food availability and blah blah blah, and they just look at that kind of bulk data. So they're just looking at like how much do people in France exercise versus in the Congo as reported by like their governments or something. Let's search for exercise. Wait, the word exercise is not on the page? It fucking said they controlled for exercise. What the fuck? X Let's try workout or something. Calorie? Okay, here it says in the abstract, controlling for other food types. Okay, so they controlled for some other food types, like how much fiber is eaten, how much meat is eaten, how much fruit, oil, and cereal is eaten. I don't think the way they control for these things is perfect, but let's just take their word for it. That certainly doesn't include squid on the list, so incomplete. Fish is something they should fucking include. Like fish, there's that whole thing about fish having mercury or something. So maybe they should have included that. Maybe the richer people got more fish, and then they have more mercury in their diet, and then that causes diabetes. Like there's a there's a known fucking poison associated with fish. I mean, I think it's like low enough not to be dangerous, but I don't know, maybe. Anyways, okay, so they try to factor in certain food types, like how much do people eat fruit, total calories eaten, overweightness and obesity, period effects. So I guess that's like different time periods, like obesity's like went up during these 5 years and then down during these 5 years, and they're trying to like even it out or something. I think that's what they mean. Several socioeconomic variables such as aging, urbanization, and income. So they just didn't do exercise. They did not control for exercise at all. So it wasn't even surveys like I was imagining they could have plausibly done. They just didn't control for it. That is my takeaway here. I think if they controlled for exercise, they would have mentioned on this list, it would have merited at least one word. They could have just put like comma, exercise, comma, and several. Oh, the way they controlled for other food types is they... Oh, that's interesting. Well, these people didn't lie. The random article. These people lied. Medical News Today. These people are not scientists. These are journalists. And they get things wrong all the time. It is super bad, but it's different than lying in science. Anyways. They're saying like more availability of meat and diet did not correlate with diabetes. Oh, they said they controlled for sedentary behavior. And alcohol use. They claim that physical activity. Alright, let's search for physical activity. Oh, International Physical Activity Questionnaire. Look, okay, so that you're physically inactive if you don't do 5 30-minute moderate intensity activities per week, 3 20-minute vigorous activity and intensity activities per week, or an equivalent combination achieving 600 metabolic equivalent minutes per week. This is terrible. This is terrible. This is not going to do a good job of noticing that people walk around a lot, or that people do their own laundry in the river. Anyway, so they sort of controlled for exercise, but very badly. But then they didn't list it in the things they controlled for some reason. But yeah, this does not work well. Anyways, you could look at more details. But their methods basically don't really work very well. That's their problem. Like, okay, for example, it's possible that there is some factor, some sort of pre-diabetes uh cause that's like getting you partway to diabetes that causes both one, liking sugar more, and 2, diabetes. So there's increased demand for sugar from people who want who are like on the path to diabetes, for example. There's just like way too many factors to do good research for this. And they're so far away from like studying what happens to individuals or what causal mechanisms there are. And again, just on broad general principles of what we know about how the body works, we like break all our foods down into sugar, so why would eating sugar be a problem? I mean, there are certainly ways sugar could be bad. Like maybe when you eat a bunch of raw sugar, you got like too much at once instead of if you have to break it down, maybe it's spread out over time more, and that's better. Like for example, so it's not like impossible that eating a bunch of sugar like causes diabetes, but they are so far from actually figuring it out. Anyway, I want to finish looking at this one because it was a little mysterious at first, but I think I got a handle on some of the things that could be going on. But I want to keep looking. Okay, investigator blinding during experiments was impossible. It's not literally impossible. Like they're kind of making an excuse, but it's much harder. So I understand why they didn't do it, but you certainly could do it. You could make the mice like eat out of a box, a black box, and the investigators would be like unable to know which box each mice had. And on top of that, you could do things like, okay, so maybe the boxes are different weights, so you could add weights to one of the boxes, and you can get them to feel identical. And on top of that, you could have like assistants move all the boxes so that the investigators, the people actually doing the research, never touch the boxes. They only see the outsides. You just have to make the outsides look identical. And maybe you have to make the outsides sound identical when the mice like bump into them or something. I don't know. It's hard to be perfect, but you could do better if you tried. So I don't like it when they're making excuses and they call something impossible. It's not impossible. Like, you didn't do it. You made a choice not to do it because it was hard. Okay, so they de-identified genotypes and diagrams. So basically they're saying when they crunched the data, they didn't know which mice were which. When deciding on the algorithms, something like that. Experiments were repeated independently at least 3 times. How independently? What do they mean by independently? Like, because if there's someone in charge who says we need 3 different people to do this experiment, here's the experiment. Like those are not fully independent experiments. There's the common factor of the guy in charge telling them all what to do. So it's only partially independent. Like by independent they mean different personnel, different equipment, different mice, different lab, different location. but like all having the same instructions about what to do, something like that. Wait, purchased from the Jackson laboratory, or was it not independent? Did all at least 3 different independent tests all use mice from the Jackson laboratory? No other laboratory mice were used? There's a single source of mice? That's not fucking independent. Like, what the fuck? Stuff like this is so bad. This is why, like, I complain about science. Like, they're giving a single source after saying that the experiments were all independent. Using the same source of mice for every experiment is not independent. That's like a single point of failure where if the mice from that particular seller had an issue, some sort of bias or whatever, you have a problem, you get fucked. What, do I need to go back? I don't know what just happened, but 36? So the mice from the particular single place they bought them were crossed with mice in a single lab to generate something. And then they used a Yale animal facility. It's unclear to me if they actually even had 3 different labs do even part of the study. I don't know what they mean by independently. Maybe they just mean the experiments were independent of each other. Like, they got different mice and they started again, and they're just like, we're going to do this 3 times in a row in different rooms or something. Like, they give so little detail about what they actually did. It's ridiculous. Like, they have quite a bit of a budget. They're putting a lot of work into this. They should document it so much better. It's unreasonable how badly they document it and what people publish. Like, we have the fucking internet. We're not limited by paper and length. There's no reason that they couldn't have like hundreds of pages of documentation of exactly what they did and just say, and here's all the details step by step. But they just don't do that, and it's ridiculous. So like this is another thing. All the mice were susceptible to 12-hour light dark cycles, apparently. So that's not independent. They're all getting the same thing. That's not. If you're doing 3 independent experiments, you have like 3 different groups of people using their own daylight cycles instead of standardized ones. Like they'd each just choose that independently. When they're all using the same cycle, that's not independent. Ad libitum? As much or as often as necessary. I think what they're saying is they gave the mice unlimited food. So that throws it off, because that's not how humans actually use regular eating or KD eating. Humans eating regularly or keto do not just eat as much as they want. They don't just have unlimited food. So that's already like a huge difference from how humans eat. All they're saying is they gave the mice unlimited amounts of different types of food. Some of the mice got like cat food or whatever, you know? It's like some of the mice got cat food and some got meat, and the ones that ate meat did better. And they both could have as much as they wanted. Like maybe one of the other groups overate or something. Maybe they mentioned overeating earlier. I don't know. Nathan Fisher. Footballer? What should I search for? That's not enough info. You might mean the footballer, I don't know, but I'm not sure. Purchased from research diets. This kind of info is really bad, by the way, because like research diets probably updates the food they sell sometimes. It doesn't actually tell you enough about what to feed them. Oh look, Purina! I said cat food and they're feeding them Purina. You can post a link in the Discord. I'll try to click live chat, but YouTube's terrible about letting links through. I don't know why. But if you can give a link if you like put spaces in the middle or like leave out the beginning or something, it should work. Is one of the ways to do it. But if you just tell me what to Google search, I can do that. They're feeding them fucking saccharin. Like, this is not a like neutral, natural mice diet or whatever. This. Right, this sugar substitute. So they're feeding the mice like a fake sugar. And they're using that as their control. I don't think that's reasonable. They say replace daily, but before they said provided as much as they need. I don't, maybe daily, maybe this amount of food daily is more than mice will eat. I do not know. What's HFD? Go to the beginning, search for HFD. Standard high fat diet? Oh, so they said keto beat high fat. Oh, is Nathan on YouTube? Is this the thing you're talking about? My computer's muted right now, but I can put on headphones and watch in a bit. I think the most underrated YouTube philosopher is me. But there's also others like George Reisman, Alan Forrester, Justin Malone. Okay, anyways, overall summary is they didn't really seem to take into account the issue I brought up earlier, that more of those lung cells might not be better, but more than zero is important. I didn't see anything taking that into account. And they just have a correlation They don't have the causal mechanism. The keto thing seems like a bit of a trauma, so maybe it's kind of like a vaccine where you like get the body used to a specific problem in advance and then it deals with it better. But just overall, they don't really know what the issue is, and it's not surprising really that if you change something, it will be better in some ways and worse in other ways. So they happen to change it this way, and you get a better response in this particular situation. So it could just be like random good luck, even if keto is worse on average. And giving a mouse a keto diet for 1 week is quite different than humans using keto long term. Also, they were comparing keto to high fat. I'm not actually sure what the difference is or what they mean by keto compared to high fat. So I think that maybe whatever they're doing, they're specifically saying it's not like a lot of high fat diets people use that they call keto. Like I think they might be being pretty specific about what they mean by keto. They ordered a particular thing from that like research foods place or whatever. But I don't remember seeing anything that actually explains what the difference is, which is bad. They should be able to explain what they mean by keto and how it differs from high fat. But it seems like they just never explain. Particular case for whatever reason, maybe. But overall, I'd say not very good science. Well, how are they getting the mice to enter ketosis when they said that they give all the mice as much food as they want to eat? Like, if you're right, because the thing that they do differently between the mice was just what type of food they get. But I think it said they get all the food they want. So it wasn't like they were starving them to get them to enter ketosis, I don't think. Like, I don't think they were making the mice actually diet. It was just that they were feeding them different foods. Because it says, yeah, they said they provided the diets ad libitum, which means as much or as often as necessary or desired. So I thought that meant unlimited food. They should probably not use fancy Latin words for key information and just say what they mean in plain English. That is bad of them. Okay, I'm gonna BRB and then I'll put on headphones and listen to that other guy for a minute.
I've done shooting videos for my other channel.
I don't know, output to my AirPods. Oh, I think they connected to my iPhone instead of my computer. Alright, what's it doing now? AirPods.
Employee evaluation coming, as well as a tech review for my tech channel. What? Some
Right,
people
this
may
is a
not even
little
know I
too
had a
loud.
tech channel, but yeah, the tech channel
Turn
has
that
been
down for
around
you
for a long
guys.
time. It's been neglected.
Okay, that should be okay, I think.
But yeah. What up, big dog? What it do, Woeful Average? Good to see you. Yeah, I wanted to just get into the question of Democrats versus Republicans. I was inspired by this. I was talking to a friend about an incident I had when I was having a conversation with someone who was just like, he was so pro-Trump because he hated Hillary Clinton. And in his mind, for you to be anti-Trump, you have to be pro-Democrat, because it's like a false dichotomy. It's like Democrats versus Republicans. And
no, it makes perfect sense to be pro-Trump because they're anti-Hillary. Because we had to choose between Hillary and Trump. That's completely reasonable. Keeping Hillary out of office was important.
So like every time I said I don't fuck with Trump, he thought I was basically just like, no, I love Hillary. And yeah, and it's just some people who are really caught in that. And when it comes to like the Democrats versus Republican debate, both. It's like fools versus Weeblewurfs. The words mean nothing. Republic, or is this a democracy? No, it's neither. It's an oligarchy. And some people like truly believe the news is narrative. And welcome, Coco L. Good to see you. Well, I feel like you're my cousin. I have a cousin who puts Coco on names, and yeah, maybe it's a different person. Maybe it's just a little tidbit of thumbnail I can see. It looks familiar. Okay, all right, yeah. The family shows up, it starts getting weird. You know how it goes. Oh, and then I realized I could also extend this to Facebook, Fachi book. I put this around somewhere at the CE sense. Ooh, no. And I just realized there's something I forgot to add in my tech review, but it's not necessary. I'll get to it later. 3, 2, 1, and we're live on Facebook.
How do you get to stop saying new messages? They're not new anymore. I read it. Switch channels? Oh, that worked.
So yay, go streaming. No urine. See, and this is the whole thing. When I say progressive, when I think of leftist politics, I just think worker friendly. And conservative is usually privatization. That's usually what it translates to. So
yeah, so it sounds like he doesn't know Austrian economics, classical liberalism, or objectivism. Without those things, I don't know how you can talk about politics usefully. So I would recommend that you read this essay. In order to talk about politics, you need to know political philosophy. You need to know like the philosophical principles to use to get to political positions. Like you don't want to start with the issues of the day, like Trump and Hillary and abortion or whatever. You want to figure out like what are the right principles, and then how do we use them to figure out the right positions on minimum wage or unions or what stuff like that, healthcare. So this gives some of the ways of thinking that can lead you to answers rather than just starting with the answers and trying to defend them. It's better to do it in a more methodical way where you think about like what kind of system you want and why. There are people on all sides that use that approach, but then like the majority of people don't use that approach and are a lot less productive because of it. In addition, it's very important to know economics in order to really get anywhere on political issues and like government and that stuff. So in order to deal with economics, you need to look at authors like Ludwig von Mises and understand what they said. And you can agree or disagree, but you have to understand like what the ideas in the field are. This is one of the important schools of thought. It's not the only one. Like you should know like Keynesian thought and Marxian thought. But this is the one I think is important and correct. So you should have an overview of like the different schools of economic thought, neoclassical and whatever, and have like an informed opinion about them, know what they say, and if you're going to disagree with one of the schools of thought, you should know why you disagree with it, what do you think the arguments against it are. So if someone says like, why do you think that one's wrong, you can like link them to a book that explains it or something. So for example, if I run into a Keynesian, I can link them to this book called Failure of the New Economics by Henry Hazlitt. And it is a book-length refutation of general theory. Book-length refutation of general theory. So, and as I'm not aware of, I haven't managed to find so far any rebuttal to this book from Keynesians. There probably is one somewhere, but I don't know where it is. I don't know how to find it. And I've asked some like scholars and stuff, and I haven't gotten any answer. But anyway, so if I ran into a Keynesian, I would say, like, here's this book. Do you have any answer to the arguments? Do you know of any rebuttal that any Keynesian wrote? If your side didn't write a rebuttal, doesn't that seem pretty bad, etc.? And this is a better way to figure out what the truth is than to just jump into the middle of the things that you hear about on CNN and Fox News and that like outrage people and they yell and scream at each other over. Those kind of political debates aren't very productive. If you want to learn economics, Mises can be kind of hard, so a better place to start is with Hazlitt. But not that book. That book is hard. These are not his books. I'll just search specifically. Well, it's is it Time Will Turn? No, it's Run Back, I think. I want to get the title right. Yeah, Time Will Run Back. Those are some good books to start with. Then maybe some of Mises's shorter books or some like articles on Mises.org or something. Or if you have sources that you think refute Austrian economics from your school of thought, like that's also a place one can start. Like trying to read what Marxians think is wrong with Mises and their summary of Mises and so on. Rather than reading Mises directly, that can be acceptable, but you have to deal with Mises in some way. Like directly or some critics you think have a good point, rather than just ignoring it. And from what I heard from that guy, he seems like the kind of person who just doesn't know anything about it and doesn't factor economic thinking into his analysis.
Yeah, certain things be privatized? Sure, like shoes and stuff like that. You want to have like a shoe company that's privatized, and sure, but like I'm all for democratizing the workplace, and I think that's what the future is going to be. It's taking the power away from the people who deny their workers a living wage. So the people who have all the money in the world can continue to make more money than they'll ever know what to do with.
I already approved.
And then we'll have continue to have more than a third of our world's economy buried in tax havens that we will never.
Yeah, I'm hearing a lot of modern political slogans and sound bites. He sounds like someone who's been exposed to a lot of propaganda and he's repeating it, which is different than like critical, thoughtful investigation where you know more than the news channels rather than just repeating the crap they said. But he's using like a lot of buzzwords just in regular ways instead of saying anything smart about them that like sees through them or sees them in a clearer way or like knows something more advanced.
Find out about. That's money that's being prevented from like treating sick people. So the real solution is taking the power away from the corporations, killing corporations, taxing them out.
Killing corporations. Right. So he's an anti-capitalist, and there's no sign here that he has any counter arguments to the arguments in favor of capitalism. So I think he's just a hateful victim of propaganda who the news and media and his teachers and so on have turned him into a hateful puppet of their agenda and ideas. So it's very common, but also very sad. So here's the link to that for anyone who wants it. I wonder if that guy is still here or he like already left before I even looked at the video. People like that, like who recommend really low quality things, frequently do not stick around very long to actually discuss or talk. But it's okay. It was a decent example of like listen to something, get an impression of it, give some reactions. I had things to say about it. And I haven't done too many similar things recently, so it wasn't repetitive. but I don't want to spend very long on it. Like the science thing was more interesting, and as being able to like read science things and get anywhere with them is kind of important and like rare. I think like being able to tell someone like this guy just doesn't know anything about economics or political philosophy is like something a lot of people could do really easily. Whereas like reading through the scientific study without actually being a scientific expert in the field and still coming up with things to say and like some interpretation of it is that's quite unusual. You can't really get that in many other places, if any. Yeah, like everything he said was bad science, that's true. A lot of people are very reluctant to click on links and stuff, but I give people like short chances a lot because I can evaluate links quickly and accurately. I think so, at least. Um, but it's like less of a cost for me. Like I'm curious, I like to see a variety of things. And it's not too much work for me to try things. Like I can try things like cheaply and efficiently, so it's not such a big deal. There's a lot of people like clicking on a link is like a big deal to them or something somehow. There are people who pay like a lot of attention to whatever's in front of them. So, like once it's in front of them, then they sort of are obligated to spend tons of time and attention on it. It's similar to how people they treat whatever's in their social circle as like really important. Like whoever they run into in their social circle, like that must be important and gets a lot of attention. And whoever's like not whoever's an outsider like doesn't get attention. But once something gets in, it gets like the really good treatment. They're careful about what they let in, so they have trouble like skimming links and previewing things. I think that's one of the factors. Okay, so been streaming for 3 hours. I was gonna talk about this Christmas thread more. I only got through like the very beginning. Um, but might be time to stop. Oh yeah, this thing. Oh, yeah, I said my thoughts on this already, so that's fine. Okay, as a closing thought, I recommend everyone go to FI, 4:49 p.m. Pacific time today. Draft discussion trees. Draft 3, major changes. I added a lot of new text and stuff. I suggest read this, reply to this, feedback this. I'm working on an article on discussion trees, explaining how they work and stuff. And it has a fair amount of yes-no philosophy concepts integrated into it. All right, later.